Hey, what's up, everybody? Yellow Turtle here with my co-host Beef. Welcome to another episode of the LUKSOfam podcast, brought to you by KEEZ. LUKSOfam podcast is meant to be a short and informational show where we provide some takes on the latest LUKSO news in the space. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a core contributor and business development lead at KEEZ, an uprising thought leader in the DAO space, and my best friend, Sage. Very excited to talk about his latest article, how universal profiles can relieve DAOs of their pain, which can be found on the KEEZ website at keez.space. But before we get into all that, first, let's hear a word from our sponsors over at LEEQUID.
LEEQUID is a liquid staking solution purposely built for the LUKSO blockchain. Users can stake LYX tokens and, in return, earn receipt SLYX tokens redeemable one-to-one for the deposited LYX. LEEQUID notably offers flexibility, allowing users to opt in or out of staking at any moment via the protocol's liquidity pool. This feature removes the potentially extensive wait times typically associated with traditional staking methods. With the support of advisors and multi-signatories from the LUKSO team, LEEQUID is steadfast in its commitment to achieving decentralization from the beginning, underlining transparency and trust. Following a thorough audit by consensus, LEEQUID is set to launch in October, integrating suggestions to ensure a seamless and secure user experience. Don't forget to follow LEEQUID on Twitter to stay updated on opportunities for earning passive rewards and contributing to the security of the LUKSO blockchain.
Sage, how you doing?
Not bad, man. Having a good night. I'm blushing a little bit after the best friend comment, but right back at you, pal.
Of course. Beef, how you feeling tonight?
I am pretty good. My brother just got married this past weekend, so that was a fun time. Finally good to be back home, though. I missed my little dude, but super hyped. And yeah, your intro for Sage made me go, aw.
Well, should we hop right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's get a little bit of background of Sage to start the show, just for some new listeners to the pod. Sage, talk a little bit about your journey with KEEZ from inception to now being the biz dev lead and a core contributor.
Cool. Yeah, I got invited to help on KEEZ, which was at the time just a small Telegram chat. And that was back when I was a senior in college, about 2 years ago now. And I got invited in that chat, brainstorming around some ways that we can help mobilize this community of people that were looking to invest in the new creative economy. So we started out and started making moves. Initially, we were a magazine. Then we started making moves towards potentially NFT releases. And as LUKSO kept moving down the line towards mainnet, we kept deciding to wait until said inevitable mainnet. So it led us to be able to take some time in the lulls and really think about our strategy moving forward. I thought that although that was during when it was happening, it was very slow and it was a real grind to keep it pushing forward. But now that we're getting really close to the prime time here, it's been very exciting, and I think it was very valuable. But met some very cool friends along the way, made some great connections, and really looking forward to where it's going.
It's awesome.
Hell yeah. So how have your experiences over the past few years with KEEZ kind of shaped the direction of our vision and our roadmap?
I think that there were some times early in the KEEZ days where there was not a whole lot of energy going around, right? There was a lot of kind of feeling that we weren't getting anywhere close to mainnet and that things were just moving along so slow, and we were making decisions to not make any deployments on Ethereum or any other blockchain, and we were going to wait for LUKSO, right? And those notions really it made it drag along a little bit because all we were doing was planning, thinking. But it made it so we ended up with like a real small team, and I being off of college and being given the opportunity to stay at home and work this out of school, had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was giving for a couple months there like the most energy out of anyone in KEEZ, kind of just beating the drum, keeping the energy alive. So a lot of my initial thinking around contribution gated DAOs over non-financially gated DAOs, thoughts around like not going after VC funding because this is a community-based group. We need to go after grant funding and natural revenue. thoughts around kind of this media outlet of like, how can we create network effect for LUKSO, which is the ultimate goal of KEEZ, even the mission as it lives now these days. So how can media play a role in that, and how can we begin to move that media on chain once LUKSO is fully usable and ups are live? So a lot of the current position that we're in with KEEZ was from early thinking of myself and Rob, and definitely back to Ethan Altz as well when they were giving time in the early days, and you guys too. It's great to see that those early concepts are still sticking and we come back to them every day, right? There's reassurances I find constantly on Twitter, on Miro, on a bunch of different platforms that are just reassuring some of this thinking and making us feel like we're going in the right direction. So it's good to see. I'm glad that we're still pushing along, and I'm very happy with the direction that we're continuing to go.
Yeah, a lot of that thinking can be tied back to the initial inception, like you said, in that first Telegram group, and then kind of evolved over time to the first hackathon. And that's where I feel like a lot of the ideas around KEEZ and, addressing certain DAO pain points kind of stemmed from that moment. And then fast forward to a little bit over a year later, these thoughts are still, in the forefront of your mind, and it kind of leads us into the article you just wrote and published last week, how universal profiles can relieve DAOs of their pain. So if you want to just kind of unpack that, what was the vision for this article and what was kind of inspired you to write this?
Yeah, so DAOs have been like my really like a turning point for crypto for myself. I got in as an initial investor, and then that was kind of fun following the EVMs. And then like NFT summer came around, and that was like a big pickup for myself. It was something entertaining to do on chain. And with that came like the notion of DAOs. And with my management background, I was very interested in that. So I've spent most of my thinking around DAOs and how they can be effective. And with most of my time being spent around LUKSO as well, a lot of that thinking goes into how they're utilized on the EVM, as well as how universal profiles can improve how they're currently done elsewhere. So this article came from the Twitter Licks memes, tweeting out at some people on Twitter like, hey, I'm curious what ups can bring to the DAO space, right? How can universal profiles change how DAOs operate? And I immediately hopped on that thread and hit him with some of my thoughts. And we went back and forth for a good hour or two. And I was like, hey, by the way, I write blog posts for KEEZ bi-weekly. I'll write the next one next Tuesday on this kind of conversation and try to put these topics down in a more readable form. So that's where the inspiration from this article came. I thought it turned out well. There's a lot of pain points, and it's tough to generalize, right? DAOs is a very overused, often misused word to generalize like a lot of different groups, right? So I did make a lot of generalizations throughout the article just to kind of push some points across, but I thought that hit some big pain points pretty well.
Yeah, it really did. It was a really good read. I feel like I walked away after I was done reading it with a lot more information. And, it really sparked my curiosity even more about like what we're so excited about with ops. So yeah, like my DAO history is somewhat limited. I've only done like snapshot voting and ENS. And then most recently I did that Kelly Greer Series B bachelorette type thing on base where I kind of submitted something and then people got to vote on it. But kind of, speaking more broadly about DAOs, what's like some of the most pressing challenges of the current state of DAOs, and like how are ups going to be the game changer?
Well, you just hit on one, which is participation rate, right? You just participated in one of the boys club governance options on Joke, which is a fantastic platform. I really enjoy the work that they're doing over there. And I base a lot of my articles on Joke as well as their founder, David Phelps. But one of the biggest issues, and that has been consistent over the years, is participation rate. People actively voting in DAOs is often much less than 10%, let's say even 5%, right? So getting people to actively come out and participate in the governance process is a huge hindrance. I think that I address it in the article as universal profiles because they are more user friendly. Naturally, you're going to get people that are able to participate more, right? That participation rate might simply be so low because people are using MetaMasks, and the process to do so, to participate, is just a wall in and of itself. Right. So just the fact that universal profiles are more user friendly should, in theory, increase the participation rate, but also the ability for it to be a profile is going to as well. You're going to be able to gamify it more. You're going to be able to create new experiences, represent data in those universal profiles that you've never been able to represent in a wallet before. And it's going to essentially just create new kind of governance systems as a whole, which in hopes are more fun, more engaging, and bring more people to participate, right? So that is definitely a big one that I see UPS being able to change, and that I would love to see some change made towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit kind of three big points in your article, which was, the pain points of DAOs, which you identified as identity and reputation, which I think you just touched on a little bit with the transference of metadata between universal profiles, Sybil resistance, which again, I believe universal profiles helps with, and making governance fun and increasing that participation rate. So, from identity management to DAO governance, like, is everything encapsulated by this universal profile, or are there going to be other things that we need to work on for this to happen effectively, or is it just simply the universal profile?
I think again, being the non-technical individual that I am, a lot of my thinking on this is very conceptual, right? So I'll preface with that, but I do think that the universal profile is just the vehicle for this stuff, right? You still need the systems in place. You still need the contributions to be given. You still need the data created in order to build the profiles, right? But people are trying that on the EVM, right? I'm big in the soulbound community right now because I thought I saw SBTs coming out and I was like, oh, this is going to be great for identity and reputation. And then as you dive in further, you're like, oh, wow, this theoretically is very cool, but because it's being used on systems like MetaMask or in systems like MetaMask, there's just too many issues with it, right? It brings a certain level of something that isn't there yet, but it is also not optimal, right? And can be further optimized using a universal profile. So I don't think that necessarily the universal profile itself can naturally solve all of these options, but it opens the doors for these options to be solved, right? You'll be able to actually create yourself a identity and a reputation and house it in a universal profile, right?
Yeah, for sure. And thinking back to some of Fabian's last talks, thinking on Sybil resistance, it will cost money for users to spin up universal profiles. Not much, right? But that was one of the things that he talked about, was it's not feasible for a bot to spin up 1,000 universal profiles. So that helps against Sybil resistance. And then also with the identity and reputation, because people will have to kind of build their identity on this chain and build the identity within their universal profile, taking that from platform to platform, and having control over that data will make it easy for the rails to be built across multiple different platforms, but taking the universal profile across to each as the real game changer there, right?
Yeah, naturally. With bots comes a lot of game theory, right? The cost of spinning up and up can be directly related to the cost of what treasury you might be able to exploit, right? If it's going to cost X amount of money for you to spin up 1,000 universal profiles, but you could then leverage that 1,000 universal profiles to exploit a treasury for double X, right? It'll still happen. So I think that it's less, that is obviously a win there of like, it costs a little bit of money at least. It's Elon's take with X, right? We're going to limit bots by charging people to make a profile, right? It's going to limit, but they'll still be there, right? So in theory, KEEZ, they're thinking with reputation-based communities, it's there for many of reasons, but with a a robust reputation community, right, and the voting system to go along with it, you can create systems where people can only participate when they've been around and contributing and have been verified by other community members, right? It'll make it so even if a bot spun up 1,000 wallets, I don't know 1,000, those 1,000 wallets. Those 1,000 wallets have been never interact with myself or either of you or anybody else in KEEZ. Therefore, they're not going to be able to even have the ability to exploit a treasury or influence a governance decision because they haven't built up that reputation, right? And this is another reason for our thinking with financially gated governance, right? If those bots can spin up a node, but they still can't participate in governance until they have tokens and they can just go purchase those tokens, then again, it's just game theory. It's how many of these tokens can I go purchase in order to still make money off this exploit? Versus if it was something like coming on this podcast and you guys delivered me some tokens or a reputation token that says I came on this podcast, which gives me the ability to influence your guys' next guess, right? That is, again, a fun governance mechanism that is reputation based rather than financially based. I think that is what really excites me with Sybil resistance. And I spoke a little bit about that, in the article.
Yeah, Fabian talked about that in the CV Summit talk as well, that, DApps would be able to filter essentially through universal profiles, kind of, deciding which ones are bots and which ones are not. And it could be simple token gating, like you're saying, through non-transferable tokens, or by some other means to, just through activity or, different things to decipher whether an account is actually a bot.
Right. And I addressed it simply as operating within KEEZ, but using a universal profile, you would be able to much easily take your contributions within KEEZ DAO and take it to another DAO in the LUKSO ecosystem if those guys were optimized for yours as well. I mean, part of our hackathon submission from that initial build-up was you'd be able to earn these tokens, and then in the governance process for another DAO, say I earned reputation in KEEZ, and then there was DAO B over here, those guys could recognize the contribution that I earned in KEEZ and enable me to take my rep that I've built here over to their group and participate in their governance, right? That's something that is enabled on some other DAOs in EVMs and other ecosystems, but again, with basic token voting, you can optimize for financial holding of a certain token and allow them to be able to use over there. But again, anybody can go buy a token and take it wherever they want. If I earned this reputation in KEEZ and these guys were recognizing that my contributions there were valuable and they valued my opinion in the governance process over in their group, then that's something that's very interesting. And again, doesn't even need to be on LUKSO. I went from KEEZ to just LUKSO to now with the universal profile, you'd be able to take it to, in theory, any EVM that recognize these tools.
Right.
Yeah, that's really key. Just kind of thinking about my experiences the past few years, you kind of saw the financial aspect of the game theory play out a couple times in some bigger DAOs. And I don't mean to, shine any negative light. It's an emerging world. There's going to be things that work and things that don't. But I know like Ape DAO has had some issues where like bigger accounts have pushed for funding for certain things, and then these things will pass simply because the people behind these proposals own so much ape coin or have so many Bored Apes or mutants. So yeah, like this is really the next step, the next evolution of what it means to be a DAO. And it's super exciting, and you've been like on the ground, doing all this work in DAOs. And I know you touched on it before, but you get kind of some of your inspiration from David Phelps out of Joke DAO. Can you kind of talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, to that last point too, Beef, it definitely has shown a lot. I don't remember specifically which protocol it was that there was a DAO on, but they had one of their largest proposals that they've ever had. And it was to like completely shift their strategy as a whole, right? They were like hitting a fork in the road of like, we need to go one direction or the other. And the vote was happening. They were already at the highest level of participation that they've had for any proposal. And it was swinging like in one direction, like pretty significantly. And then all of a sudden some guy comes in with a 42% share of the token supply and immediately swings the vote the other way within the last hour of the proposal, right? Essentially getting rid of the minority voters that were just putting in all of that work, that are most likely more educated on the proposal. I don't want to say more or less, most likely, but like chances that they were more educated having these conversations in forums, participating with their friends, versus this one guy coming in and swaying the decision because it'll help his bag that he has, right? But yeah, I digress. To get into, David, I mean, he's been one of my favorite follows on Twitter for a while. I don't have many people's notifications on, but I have his. And I think that he's a great thinker. He's thinking on DAOs. He's thinking on the social side of DAOs. How does adoption come? How do we make this governance fun, right? He put out a tweet the other day, which I mentioned a little bit in this article, but it was along the sides of, and again, it's creative thinking, right? It pushes you in a direction that you might not have thought before. But he's like, you guys use Twitter and Reddit and these other socials every day, liking and retweeting things, not thinking that in theory your likes and your retweets are almost like governance already, right? If someone puts a tweet up that has a yes or a no, and it receives a can I swear on here, a shit ton of likes, you're essentially like stating your opinion on that thing, publicly liking it, right? So why can't we have a mechanism just like that for governance, for actually making decisions within a community group, right? And that's like, oh man, like I hear the word governance and I'm like, oh yeah, our democracy, right? But like the thought that I could just go on a social media like Twitter and participate and make change in my community is game changing, right? So I think that's a big part of why I really like him. I think what he brings to the table is a lot of unique thoughts, and it's fun to follow.
And we got to meet David down in New York City.
All right, we at the Boys Club LUKSO meetup, just nice and in passing, but I kind of fanboyed out a little bit. I was walking up to the second floor, and I mean he has his picture on Twitter of his actual face, and I see it. He tweets too much, tweets like alts, but I saw him right away, and I was like, what up, man? But yeah, no, it was cool. It was cool to meet him. That party was awesome. I loved your guys' episode on that too. Met a lot of great people at that event.
You guys flexing on me again. The old money party, making me feel all sad all over again, all the feels.
So kind of shifting gears back towards DAOs a little bit, I was wondering if you could kind of break down how the universal profile can kind of change the individual's journey through DAOs and in the DAO space, and kind of think about the current platforms that we have currently, or that the current platforms that we have now, and then also, what could be built on LUKSO, and, what did we kind of hypothesize with the hackathon project that we participated in last year?
Yeah, a lot of things there. I'll start individual being able to journey around, right? The universal profile's main selling point, at least for myself, is that it is a universal profile. It is one profile that you can take from platform to platform, bringing all your data with you, utilizing whichever information you want when you want, and whatever you don't want when you don't want, right? So that alone for a user is very cool, right? So like as just myself, if I wasn't participating in governance, it's very cool to be able to have one profile, not have to worry about all these emails and passwords and blah, 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 blah. I can take all my information wherever I go. That's dope. Being able to have a contributing member to essentially a workplace that has all of their data attached to them. And when I say all of their data, I think it's important to recognize too the need for privacy too, right? I'm big on projects like Disco that emphasize being able to choose what information you want to present and what information you want to withhold at any point, right? You're not like Evan McMullen, who is another fantastic follow similar to David Phelps. She's been a huge influence in my thinking, but she always makes this analogy of like, when you have a backpack on, if you're just walking down the street with it, it's not clear, right? Like you're not walking around with a clear backpack where everybody can see all up inside of it and see all your belongings at any point that they want and do whatever they want with that information. Right now it's closed, it's dark, and information only comes out of it when you choose to pull out of it, right? So I think that identity and profiles need to optimize for that as well. which is like, I shouldn't just be, I mean, if someone knows my MetaMask address, they can simply go and see every single asset that is in it, right? I mean, in theory, I could have multiple, right? But then again, like now we're not on the topic of a universal profile. We're on the topic of having to manage multiple profiles all at once, which is something we want to avoid. So again, those privacy things can be created within the subgroupings of universal profiles, subvaults. You can also create multi-level ownership, which is awesome to see. So I think like on a security level, on like a transference of data level, like that stuff is great. And now to refer back to like how that impacts a DAO in a workplace where you have information that you can reference from all of the places that you go, right? Say if we have a couple examples, like if I'm on something like Twitter or like LUKSO, where I have all of my social interactions with all of the people around me that are documented on chain and represented in my universal profile. If I have my participation in KEEZ, where all of my contributions and everything are documented and represented in there, right? And then I have, let's say, like a third one of like, I play this game all the time. I play like a trading card like game, right? And all of that information and whoever I've interacted with and all the positive and negatives are represented in my universal profile. And now I choose to go join somewhere else, right? If they value any of that information or can utilize any of that information, it's readily presentable and easy to use, right? Which is just, again, like awesome, right? If I can go take my contributions that I've built in KEEZ and the reputation and friends that I've built on LUKSO and go utilize all of that stuff in another group, right? I mean, another part of the reason why we want to do contribution gated DAO at KEEZ is that we want people to build, when we say build reputation, right? It's like why you want to go get an internship when you're in college, right? Like in order to leverage the next stone up, you got to make some progress below it, right? So the fact that I can go and have my contributions tracked, have my reputation tracked, all attached to this universal profile and take that where I go, I'm making this leverage, I'm making these connections at KEEZ, and I can go then take those to this next group and they can see that, oh, this guy knows X, or this guy's interacted with this guy at KEEZ, right? These guys work directly together on a project for several months. Oh, that's awesome. We can give him higher level governance say on these specific topics because we have that information that's verifiable. And that's not something that happens on EVM like any other DAOs that I'm personally aware of, right? Like again, and most of them are token gated, right? If I have the only thing that the other DAO knows when I go there is what assets are in my wallet, and those assets are simply ERC20s for the most part, or NFTs, right? That doesn't have any information attached to it besides how much wealth I have at any market cycle, right? So again, the individual, it opens a significant door for like data transferability, ownership of a single profile, and then being able to leverage your work and take your work with you and use it elsewhere, right? That's my favorite use case of it, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Just thinking about it from the individual perspective, I'm sure you'll have comments on this too, but just the security side of having it be based on a universal profile just unlocks so much more possibilities, tiered layers of security for that user. If you want to use social recovery, if you want to use like a ledger, you can build that in, which kind of makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. You could, using that social recovery, if you lost your ability to get on your device, on a traditional like MetaMask account, equate it to like losing your seed phrase, you're kind of toast with any on-chain reputation that you've built with that address, where like you're more comfortable building the type of history on a universal profile because, UPS code's got your back, because it enables so much. So yeah,
Right.
it's super exciting.
Right. And I think that that's something that like people hit on all the time, the community recovery topic, or Fabian's constantly being like, oh, seed phrases, those are a thing of the past, by the way. You don't even like, don't worry about those. You won't need those anymore. Which I think is, again, massive for user experience. The fact that I have to, when I tell my buddies to get a MetaMask and they're like, I got to write down 12 words on paper and like keep it somewhere, say that's ridiculous, right? Like, and again, like it's something that we hear all the time at like in the LUKSO ecosystem, but it is for a good reason. It should not be understated, I would say. And the concept of community recovery is a game changer, right? I think that, again, as I'm around soulbounds a lot, like that is my biggest gripe for soulbounds, right? Like I get all of this rich information attached directly to my profile that checks a lot of the boxes for why we want reputation, right? It's earned by me. It's non-transferable. People can't buy this from me. I can't give it to them randomly. It shows that I earned it, only I earned it, and it's attached to me. But it is so easy to lose a MetaMask account. It is so easy. One fire, God forbid, but one fire in your house, and now all of that stuff is just gone, right? There's no community recovery options. There's no, I mean, maybe potentially in the token distribution model, you built some like backdoor where you could recover SBTs in theory, like maybe. But again, SBTs on a universal profile, you got community recovery options, you got other wallets that are going to have potential ownership and multi-sig style over that universal profile that you just lost, which would make you be able to recover it very fast, right? Like it would, there's so many more options, and it makes this technology so much more usable and better for reputation again. So yeah, and to stress too, like we're talking about the individual, which is probably where you guys are going to go next, but it's not just for the individual necessarily. Like DAOs, organizations are going to have universal profiles themselves, and this security is also available for them too, right? Like we, in the early days of KEEZ, created a multi-sig, and 3 of the people that were on the multi-sig lost access to the wallet that they used, and we only had like 0.25 ETH in it or something like that, but that stuff is just lost. We even had keys.eth in there, and we've had to wait for it to expire so we could go buy it back. Like that's like we just couldn't do anything about it. It just was lost forever, right? And that is just like, if we expect someone like Apple to come online and have a universal profile or do anything really with blockchain, like we just can't have that happening, right? So I think it goes far for the individual, sorry, yes, but it also goes really far for the organization itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we're kind of running up on time, but I do want to ask this question. And if you could kind of quickly give me the rundown on how universal profiles can potentially improve fund management, governance over the universal profile, and then, fostering a healthy community. What goes into all that?
Now, I think I've said that a lot of these parts are my favorite parts, but I think thinking about it, this one is actually my favorite. Fund management is very interesting. I think that we're big at KEEZ, again, contribution gated, non-financial gated, but also with layered governance, right? Being able to govern in small, decentralized groups, I think, is the ideal end goal of KEEZ. We don't want one large group that generally participates in governance, right, on like some of the big topics, and then like a couple people in the background are making most of the important decisions, right? Or even if every decision was being allocated to the large group, right? We don't want that. What we want is a giant decentralized group that is made up of a bunch of small individual groups operating inside of it, right? So ideally, these pockets of groups that are operating inside the whole are uniquely specialized and educated in their areas to make decisions, right? As I said earlier, I'm non-technical. If a proposal were to come up to the entire group about, let's say, a change to, if we were changing our smart contracts for the DAO, right? If we wanted to change like some of the quorum rates and we wanted to like use a different code base or something like that, like I have the very little ability to like read over that and actually make a decision on it, right? I'd have to do significant research or have other people that I trust in the community explain the decision to me, right? But so that makes it not ideal for me to even make the decision on it, right? Not to mention all of the other people that would be participating either. But if we were able to have a robust reputation ecosystem where all of the people that would be ripe to make that decision, these people are educated on that area, they have worked in KEEZ on that code base, they've done past experiences in other DAO doing similar changes. If we can make it so those people are the people that are deciding on this, it makes it so smaller groups can act more efficiently, and educated groups that are ready to make this decision can make it more effectively, right? So now we're making governance decisions in a more effective and more efficient manner, which is ideally the end goal, right? So your initial question.
I think we clip it right there. That was a great answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot what your initial question was. It was around universal profiles?
Yeah, how universal profiles can help with fund management and governance and fostering a healthy community.
Okay, let me go into the fund management real quick because I forgot about that. So if you can have these specialized people making decisions in their certain areas, right, you can take that into fund management now, right? So rather than making a decision on the smart contract code base that actually governs the DAO, you can then allocate in these small groups, especially using universal profiles, their own individual vaults, right? So if you have this group that is these dedicated developers that are ready to make technical decisions, you can also allocate them their own vault within the treasury, right? So rather than, again, referring back to the initial example of like one big group of people making decisions all together on one treasury, right? Like there's safety concerns with that, there's civil concerns with that, right? If you're able to break that treasury up into the specific groups that need those funds and let those specific people govern those funds however they personally see fit because they're closest to the problems, again, you're taking that effective and efficient decision making and putting it towards something that directly impacts those people. Again, why should I have say over how the developers use their funds for developer things? I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the funds are going towards. I don't know any of these things. Let those guys decide where they need the funds allocated to. And even if they were to, like, even if we ran into a situation where someone were to exploit that specific section, right? Now, because of the universal profile, they were only able to exploit that specific small subgroup's treasury, right? All of the other subgroups' treasuries would be left alone in theory, and the main treasury would be fine, even if that small group of developers decided to coalesce behind the scenes and make some sort of proposal to withdraw funds and go elsewhere, right? So fund management in layered governance using key management, I think, is something that I'm really excited about. Being able to optimize for smaller subgroups that are ready to make decisions on their specific areas that they're closest to is something, again, that KEEZ is very excited for, and we should be able to optimize these solutions with our upgrade to our old hackathon submission. But we will see.
Soon TM.
Soon TM. Yeah, I said a lot of these things are my favorite. I love thinking about this stuff, but that is like really my bread and butter. I think is where I spent a lot of my time in management. I've spent a lot of time studying companies like Gore that focus on like a lattice structure, which is entirely focused on sending leaders to the top no matter where they arise, right? Like there's this big notion in DAOs of flat hierarchies, right? And having something entirely flat is not, again, to hit on the same words, efficient or effective, right? Like you're just decentralizing power. Like you're hitting on that one topic of like, oh, no one's in control, no one's telling us what to do, like it's decentralized, great. But like on the side of actually making decisions, getting things done, like forming in groups, it's not optimal, right? What you want is small pockets of natural leaders that are rising for the bottom to solve problems that you need done in your group, right? Which, yeah, again, love it. Love everything about it.
That's awesome. And then, so yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit because you got some upcoming plans that are really interesting that I think that the audience should hear about. You'll be leaving us on the East Coast and going to Puerto Rico for a stay and a chance at some sustainable living with some crypto native folks. So yeah, just give us the quick rundown on that, please.
Yeah, I know, like, as I've said, I've been doing a lot of research into DAOs. I mean, not to get political or anything, but like I've always been pretty apolitical And DAOs are naturally like an area that a lot of political theory comes up in. So I've been just like reading into a lot of these topics, attempting to practice DAOs and feeling like I'd like to walk the walk a little bit more instead of just talking the talk. So I found this project Cabin, listening to a Green Pill episode with Kevin Iwaki, which, to shout out a third person that I absolutely love to follow, it's Kevin Iwaki. Public Goods on Ethereum at Gitcoin is great to see. I would love to see some of their projects embracing the LUKSO blockchain. But I found Cabin on listening to a Green Pill episode, which Cabin is a project that has a network of physical co-living communities scattered around the globe, and they're a crypto project, right? They're based on the EVM, and again, they track reputation. So I'm going to go there middle of October. I'm going to begin as a naturalist, which means I will be cultivating the land, creating some sustainable farming efforts. We need to create some reoccurring water supplies that can be consistently sustained. So that's going to be my effort at first. And again, all of that contribution is going to be documented and then all issued on chain to my MetaMask, which I wish it was to a universal profile. I've been pink pilling them, don't worry. But it'll be issued to my MetaMask. I will then be able to log into their website, show off the tokens that I've received and the data that's been attached to my profile, apply to stay at the other locations around the globe. And if I get brought in based on the reputation I've built up, I'll be able to go to a multitude of other locations around the globe and participate in co-living there as well. So very excited to actually participate. I love Puerto Rico. Really excited to go spend some time in the hot weather as it's beginning to turn to fall here in Massachusetts. As much as I love the winter, I'm already dreading it. So it'll be great to be able to get out, go to the beach during the winter, which will be a first for me. But on top of that, it'll be awesome to be able to get my feet wet for the first time with some actual physical co-living communities. And I look forward to being able to do more through the future. I would love to see my early 20s be spent traveling the world, doing some co-living and some sustainable farming efforts. That would be great.
Not only are you, building your on-chain resume, / universal profile resume when it's live, but you're building your life resume, Sage, and it's pretty inspiring to see you do that. So I'm super happy and proud that I work with you.
Oh, you're making me blush too, the both of you. Look at this.
Very heartfelt episode.
Yeah, really tugging on the heartstrings over here. Yeah, I think, that's definitely been on the mind too, Beef. I would love to, be able to have my home be very sustainable living. I would love my own water sources, my own food that I grow, and I know exactly what's going into it. Being able to return back to the community, which I think is a very important part of all of this, right? It's not just me eating all this food. In theory, if we were at a scalable level of we feed all of the people that are putting in the work at this location, we can then offer it to the people around as well, I think is a big point too. So yeah, I building on-chain skills as well as IRL life skills too. Yes.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up this episode, is there anything that you want to plug, way to keep in contact with you on this journey through Puerto Rico and through your DAO efforts?
Yeah, I would say definitely follow me on Twitter at Improvda. I would say definitely keep up with the blog posts on the KEEZ.space website. I definitely want to plug KEEZ real quick. I think that it is understated, even though, again, I am guilty of not being super present on my socials. I could definitely be tweeting more. I could definitely be posting more. I could definitely be interacting more. I do just love to read and do plenty of other things on the side that take me away from my phone. But I would like to say again that like the notions behind KEEZ, although we're going in this direction and we haven't made the efforts necessarily to move towards a DAO yet, all of this stuff has been community led. Although a lot of my points are sticking, it's just because the people that have been around so far are coming in and picking up on the culture that's been established here and really enjoying it and riding along with it. But it's not to say that these things can't be changed or adapted. Our mission at any quarter could just be altered based on group decisions. So if you're in the LUKSO community or outside the LUKSO community and looking to make an impact in blockchain, we are ever accepting. And honestly, this has been, if I could work with this group of people in this culture that we have established for the rest of my life, I would very enjoy that. So super open community, plenty of ways to contribute. We would always love for more people to come and have these awesome conversations. And again, contribute at any level, whether that be given 40 hours a week or just having dumb conversation with me in the Discord about this kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely the KEEZ DAO, shameless plug, of course. And then yeah, my Twitter. I think that's about it.
I just want to continue that plug, and you're going to be listening to this on Thursday, and on Tuesday of this, this past Tuesday that just went by, we're actually doing our quarterly address. So if you want to hear some more about those open positions and how you can help out specifically, make sure to check that out.
Yes, big up to that. Definitely check out the quarterly review. We had a quarterly review last quarter too that covered a lot of kind of our organizational design. This one's going to be more about kind of what we did last quarter, what we're doing this quarter, and what positions are open. And again, I say open, but it's like more, we would really enjoy people to help in these areas, but again, open for contributions wherever you guys may see fit. So
Awesome. Well, what an episode. Thank you for joining us, Sage. Beef, you want to sign us off?
Yeah, for sure. Great episode. As always, guys, remember, none of this is financial advice. It's just a couple of dudes talking about what we love.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Thank you, and have a good night.